Right. One thing that I appreciate about your book is that you don't adopt this kind of, I don't know, naive futurism where you say, well, let's just welcome our robot overlords and everything's going to be fine. And, technology will solve all of our problems. In fact, you have a whole chapter called Giving Techno-Pessimism Its Due, where I think you do a fair job of acknowledging that people are maybe rightly concerned about some of the developments in technology. And so I want to ask about one of those concerns, which has been something that a lot of people are talking about, especially now where we're talking about how social media is potentially influencing politics and so forth, which is that if you've seen these documentaries recently, one is called The Social Dilemma, another is called The Great Hack, but they're all making a similar point, which is some people think we got to get away from technology. If only we could get off Twitter and Facebook and all these different things and put our phones away and close our computers and maybe go to a cabin in the woods and read books with paper, then we would really find some kind of human flourishing. And to leap ahead toward the end of the book, you end up talking about something that's in some respects rather different from that, which is maybe we would want to further immerse ourselves in virtual worlds and to embed ourselves within technologies in a way that might be even more pervasive than the way that people are objecting to now. So given that you appreciate the power of the concern, we're partly constituted by our attention. Our attention is being constantly absorbed by these algorithms that are ever more sophisticated in getting us to pay attention to things that maybe we wouldn't reflectively endorse. How do you simultaneously recognize the force of that concern and then end up arguing that mayhaps we should end up spending more time in virtual worlds than we do now?
Right. So I think what you're alluding to there in the chapter that I read about giving techno-pessimism its due is this attentional problem that I discuss. It's one of 5 kind of reasons to be pessimistic about our technological future. So yeah, I think there's two problems with the world that we have currently created or in the process of creating when it comes to attention. One is the sense that our attention is frequently or fragmented. So you have a lot of these services online that are competing for our attention. People often refer to it as the attentional economy. Like the goal is to grab eyeballs, suck people in, get them to return to platforms, constantly refresh their Twitter feed or their Facebook news feed, doom scrolling, as people call it. And I've seen a lot of people talking about doom scrolling today given the election that's happening in the US. That's what they're going to spend their evenings doing. So what's happening is when you have all these services online competing for attention, our capacity to pay attention to things is fragmented and undermined. So we can't actually focus and engage in activities that provide us with a sense of well-being and flourishing. And you know this yourself, you're like a kind of philosopher, psychologist, I guess. I don't know which of those you consider yourself to be more of these days. Doesn't matter, you're transgressing the disciplinary boundaries.
Right. Yeah, no discipline can contain me. I can't answer that question. Yeah. Right, sure.
A mind and intellect too large to be contained by these petty disciplinary boundaries. So, like one of these ideas in psychology, I guess it's a little bit pop psychology. It's something that's filtered into and in popular discussions is this notion of flow, and the flow state as being one of the states that's most satisfying and pleasurable for people to be in, where they're this kind of state of sustained concentration on an activity that they find intrinsically rewarding in some sense. And this fragmentation of attention undermines our capacity to do that. And the other thing that I argue is that the kinds of things that we're expected to pay attention to now are the things that aren't necessarily conducive to flourishing. And one simple illustration of this is the sense that one of the things that does seem to grab our attention online, and that is one of the main sources of this competition for attention, is outrage and these hot emotions, anger, fear. These are the things that grab our attention. And if we're constantly doom scrolling, we're not going to be very happy or flourishing, and our sense of well-being will be undermined. And I think that's something that resonates with a lot of people, this combined sense that our capacity to pay attention is fragmented. And I'm sure there's many people watching this or listening to this right now while looking on social media or something like that. And that the things that we're paying attention to aren't conducive to flourishing. So when I argue later in the book for immersing ourselves in virtual worlds more, and we can discuss what that means if you like, because again, I have maybe a slightly counterintuitive definition of what a virtual world is. you would need to address both of those issues. So the kinds of immersion that we would have in a virtual world would have to be one that sustains engagement and builds on our capacity to kind of engage in these flow type activities. And one of the arguments I have is a certain kind of game-like existence, or playing different games can do that. And it would also then have to be that we aren't paying attention to the kinds of things that undermine or contrary to our well-being, like outrage and fear, and this kind of constant doom scrolling existence that we currently have. Now, that's a much tougher problem to solve, because the technological infrastructure that we now created thrives on that, and the kind of economy. That's one of the themes in the documentary, The Social Dilemma, is that we live in this kind of surveillance capitalist economy where the only way to monetize and survive as a company is to promote that kind of engagement or attentional manipulation. So addressing that kind of ideological problem with surveillance capitalism is a much bigger challenge.